Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to part 2 of the audiobook Into the Pit from book number 1 of Fazbear Frights. Let's continue. That being said, the pizza was decent, and more important, it was the only pizza in town if you didn't count the kind from the frozen food department at the snack space. The few good restaurants in town, including Gino's Pizza and Marco's Pizza, which, unlike Jeff's, had real pizza maker names, had closed their doors not long after the mill had. "So you'll give me the money for pizza?" Oswald asked. Since Dad's job loss, Oswald's allowance had dwindled to practically nothing. Dad smiled. A kind of sad smile, it seemed to Oswald. "Son, we're bad off. But we're not so bad off I can't spot you $3.50 for a slice and a soda." "Okay," Oswald said. It was hard to say no to a warm, gooey cheese slice. Since it wasn't a school night and wouldn't be again for quite some time, Oswald stayed up after Dad went to bed and watched an old Japanese monster movie, with Jinx curled up purring on his lap. Oswald had seen a lot of B-grade Japanese horror films, but this one, Zendralex vs. Mega Zendralex, was new to him. As always, Zendralex just looked like a giant dragon thing, but Mecha Drankalix reminded him of the mechanical animals he drew when he stripped them from their fur. He laughed at the movie's special effects. The train Zendralix destroyed was clearly a toy, and at how the actor's lip movements didn't match the dubbed-in English. Somehow, though, he always found himself rooting for Zendralix, even though he was just a guy in a rubber suit. Somehow he managed to have a lot of personality. In bed, he tried to count his blessings. He didn't have Ben, but he had monster movies and the library and lunchtime pizza slices. It was better than nothing, but it still wasn't going to be enough to keep him going all summer. "Please," he wished, his eyes closed tight. "Please let something interesting happen." Oswald woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. The coffee he could do without, but the bacon smelled amazing. Breakfast meant time with his mom, often the only time he got with her until the weekend. After one necessary stop, he hurried down the hall to the kitchen. "Well, look at that! My rising sixth grader had risen." Mom was standing over the stove in her fuzzy pink bathrobe, her blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail, flipping. "Oh, yum! Were those pancakes?" "Hi, Mom." She opened her arms. "I demand a morning hug." Oswald sighed like it annoyed him, but he went over and hugged her. It was funny. With Dad, he always said he was too old for hugs, but he never turned down his mom's open arms. Maybe it was because he didn't get to spend so much time with her during the week. While he and Dad spent so much time together, they sometimes got on each other's nerves. He knew Mom missed him, and he felt bad for having to work such long hours. But he also knew that since Dad's job at the snack space was just part-time, Mom's long hours were most of the reason the bills were getting paid. Mom always said that the adult life was a fight between time and money. The more money you earned to spend on bills and necessities, the less time you got to spend with your family. It was a difficult balance. Oswald sat down at the kitchen table and thanked his mom when she poured his orange juice. "First day of summer break, huh?" Mom went back to the stove to scoop up a pancake with her spatula. "Uh-huh." He probably should have tried to sound more enthusiastic, but he couldn't muster the energy. She slid the pancake into his plate and then served him 2 strips of bacon. "Not the same without Ben, huh?" He shook his head. He wasn't going to cry. Mom ruffled his hair. "I know, it's a bummer. But hey, maybe a new friend will move into town." Oswald looked at her hopeful face. "Why would anybody move here?" "Okay, I see your point," Mom said, piling on another pancake. "But you never know. Or maybe somebody cool already lives here. Somebody you don't even know yet." "Maybe, but I don't doubt it," Oswald said. "But I doubt it." "These pancakes are great, though." Mom smiled and ruffled his hair again. Well, I've got that going for me anyway. Do you want more bacon? If you do, you'd better grab it before your dad gets in here and vacuums it all up. Sure. It was Oswald's personal policy never to refuse more bacon. The library was actually kind of fun. He found the latest book in a science fiction series he liked and a manga that looked interesting. As always, he had to wait forever to use the computers because they were all taken by people who looked like they had no place else to be. Men with scraggly beards wearing layers of ratty clothing, two thin women with sad eyes and bad teeth. He waited for his turn politely, knowing that some of these people would use the library for shelter during the day, then spend the night on the streets. Jeff's pizza was as weird as he remembered. The big empty space beyond the booths and tables was like a dance floor with nobody dance. The walls were painted a pale yellow, but they must have used cheap paint or only one coat because shapes of whatever had been on the walls before were still visible. It had probably been some kind of mural with people or animals, but now it was just shadows behind a thin veil of yellow paint. Oswald sometimes tried to figure out what the shapes were, but they were all too blobby to make out. Then there was the stage that never got used, standing empty but seemingly waiting for something, though a feature even weirder than the stage lay in the back right corner. It was a large rectangular pen surrounded by yellow netting, but it had been roped off with a sign that said, "Do not use." The pen itself was filled with red, blue, and green plastic balls that had probably been brightly colored once, but were now faded and fuzzy with dust. Oswald knew that ball pits had been popular features in kiddie playlands, but had largely disappeared because of concerns about hygiene. After all, he was going to disinfect all those balls. Oswald had no doubt that if ball pits had still been popular when he was little, his mom wouldn't have let him play on one. As a licensed practical nurse, she was always happy to point out places she'd found to be too germy to play in. And when Oswald would complain that she never let him have any fun, she'd say, "You know what's not fun? Pink eye." Except for the empty stage and the ball pit, the strangest feature in Jeff's Pizza was Jeff himself. He seemed to be the only person who worked there, so he took both orders at the counter and made the pizzas. But the place was never crowded enough that this was a problem. Today, like all other days, Jeff looked like he hasn't slept in a week. His dark hair was sticking up in weird places, and he had alarming bags under his bloodshot eyes. His apron was stained with both recent and ancient tomato sauce. "What can I get ya?" he asked Oswald, sounding bored. "A cheese slice and an orange soda, please," Oswald said. Jeff stared off into the distance as though he had to think about whether the request was a reasonable one or not. Finally, he said, "Okay, 350. One thing you could say about Jeff's pizza slices, they were huge. Jeff served them on flimsy white paper plates that were soon stained with grease, and the corners of the triangles always overlapped the plate's rims. Oswald settled into a booth with his slice and soda. The first bite, the tip of the triangle, was always the best. Somehow, the proportions of all the flavors in that bite were perfect. He savored the warm, melty cheese, the tangy sauce, and the pleasantly greasy crust. As he ate, he looked around at the few other customers. A pair of mechanics from the oil change place had folded up their pepperoni slices and were eating them like sandwiches. A table full of office workers clumsily attacked their slices with plastic forks and knives, so they wouldn't drip sauce on their ties and blouses, Oswald guessed. After Oswald finished his slice, he wished for one more, but he knew he didn't have the money for it, so he wiped off his greasy fingers and took out his library book. He sipped the soda and read, falling into a world where kids with secret powers went to a special school to learn how to fight evil. "Kid," a man's voice startled Oswald out of the story. He looked up to see Jeff in his sauce-stained apron. Oswald figured he had outstayed his welcome. He had sat in a booth reading for 2 hours after having brought a meal that cost less than $4. Yes, sir, Oswald said, because politeness never hurt. I got a couple of more cheese slices that didn't sell at lunch. You want 'em? Oh, Oswald said. No thanks, I don't have any more money. He wished he did, though. On the house, Jeff said. I just have to throw them out anyway. Oh, okay, sure. Thanks. Jeff picked up Oswald's empty cup. I'll get you some more orange soda while I'm at it. Thanks. It was funny Jeff's expression never changed. He looked tired and miserable even when he was being extra nice. Jeff brought out 2 slices stacked on a paper plate and a fresh cup of orange soda. Here you go, kid, he said, setting down the cup and the plate. Thank you. Oswald wondered for a minute if Jeff felt sorry for him, if Jeff might think he was terribly poor, like the homeless people who hung out all day in the library, instead of just the regular barely making ends meet poor that he was. But then Oswald figured if there was free pizza sitting in front of you, maybe it wasn't time to worry about the reasons for it. Maybe it was time to eat. Oswald had no problem polishing off the 2 huge slices. For the past month, his appetite had been unstoppable. When Mom cooked him piles of pancakes in the morning, she said he must be having a growth spurt, causing him to eat like he had a hollow leg. His phone vibrated in his pocket that second he sucked down the last of his soda. He looked at his dad's text. We'll be out front at Jeff's in 2 min. Perfect timing. It had been a good day. The days at the library and Jeff's pizza started to add up. The first couple of weeks had been great, but now the library didn't have the next book in the series he was reading, and he had grown bored with his online fantasy game, which, while advertised as free, now wouldn't let him advance any further without paying money. He had gotten tired of not having anybody his age to hang out with. He hadn't gotten tired of pizza yet, but he was starting to imagine that he might in the future. Tonight was Family Fun Night, a one-night-a-week event that varied depending on Mom's work schedule. Back when the mill was still open, Family Fun Night meant dinner in a restaurant, pizza or Chinese or Mexican. After their meal, they'd do some fun activity together. They go to the movies if something kid-friendly was playing, but if not, they go to the bowling alley or to the roller rink where Mom and Dad used to go on dates when they were in high school. Mom and Dad were great skaters, and Oswald was terrible, but they'd skate on either side of him, holding his hands and keeping him up. They'd usually top off their evening with a waffle cone at the ice cream place downtown. Oswald and Mom would make fun of him because no matter what ice cream flavors were available, he always got vanilla. Since the mill closed down, though, Family Fun Night had turned into an at-home affair. Mom would make something for dinner that was easy but festive, like tacos from a mix or hot dogs. They'd eat and then play board games or watch a movie they'd rented from Redbox. It was still fun, of course, but sometimes Oswald wished aloud for the old days of foreseeing new movies at the theater and having waffle cones after. And Dad had to remind him that the important thing was that they all got to spend time together. Sometimes, when the weather was nice, they'd have a family fun night. They'd, they'd pack a picnic of cold cuts and salads courtesy of the snack space and head over to the state park. They'd eat their dinner at a wooden table and watch the squirrels and birds and raccoons. Afterward, they'd go for a walk on one of the hiking trails. These outings were always a nice change, but Oswald was also aware of why these were the only fun family fun nights that ever got them out of the house. Picnics were free. Tonight they were staying in. Mom had made spaghetti and garlic bread. They had played a game of Clue, which Mom won as she usually did, and now they were piled up on the couch together in their pajamas, with a huge bowl of popcorn between them, watching a remake of an old science fiction movie. Once the movie was over, Dad said, Well, that was a pretty good movie, but not as good as the real version. What do you mean, the real version? Oswald said. That was a real version. Not really, Dad said. I mean, It was set in the same universe as the real version, but it was kind of a cheap knockoff of the one that came out when I was a kid. Dad had always had to be so opinionated. He could never just watch something and enjoy it. So the best movies are always the ones that you watched when you were a kid? Oswald said. Not always. But in this case, yes. Dad was telling in. Oswald could tell for one of his favorite things, a good argument. But the special effects in the original version stink, Oswald said. All those puppets and rubber masks. I'll take a puppet or model over CGI any day, Dad said, leaning back on the couch and propping his feet on the coffee table. That stuff is so slick and fake. It's got no warmth, no texture, and besides, you like those old Zendrelix movies, and the special effects in those are terrible. Yeah, but I just watched those to make fun of them, Oswald said, even though he really did think Zendrelix was pretty cool. Mom came in from the kitchen with bowls of ice cream. Not as good as the waffle cone place, but nothing can turn your nose up at either. Okay, if you guys don't cut out the nerd argument, I'm going to pick up the next movie we watch, and it's going to be a romantic comedy. Oswald and his dad shut up immediately. That's what I thought, Mom said, passing around the bowls of ice cream. As Oswald was lying in bed, sketching his mechanical animals, his phone vibrated on his nightstand. There was only one person other than his parents who ever texted him. Hey, Ben had typed on the screen. Hey, back, Oswald typed. How's your summer? Awesome. At Murley Beach for vacation. It's so cool. Arcades and mini golf everywhere. Jealous, Oswald typed. And he meant it. A beach with arcades and mini golf really did sound awesome. Wish you were here, Ben typed. Me too. How's your summer? Okay, Oswald texted. He was briefly tempted to make his summer sound cooler than it was, but he could never lie to Ben. Been going to the library a lot. Lunch at Jeff's Pizza. That's all? It did sound pathetic compared with a family trip to the beach. He texted. Pretty much, yeah. I'm sorry, Ben texted. And then, that pizza place is creepy. They chatted a little while longer, and although Oswald was happy to hear from Ben, he was also sad that his friend was so far away and having such a good time without him. And that was part 2 of Into the Pit. Thank you all so much for listening, and don't worry, I will try to make more audiobooks. Don't worry about this. All right? My schedule is a bit tight, so I am trying to work around the clock. So don't worry about these audiobooks coming out. And with all that, thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Thank you, and goodbye.